Welcome. And tonight we travel back more than 100 years to an America that feels both familiar and strangely distant. Before we begin, find a comfortable place to rest, relax your shoulders, and let your mind slowly drift into another time. Our story begins in the summer of 1914. The United States is a young and growing nation. It has not yet become the world's leading superpower. Its population is just under 100 million people, and much of the country still feels rural and quiet. In the countryside, farmers wake before sunrise. Roosters crow in the cool morning air, and horses pull wagons down dusty roads. Electricity has arrived in some towns, but not everywhere. In many homes, evenings are still lit by oil lamps and candles. In the cities, however, America is changing rapidly. The skyline of New York grows taller every year. Chicago's factories roar with activity. Detroit is becoming the center of a new industry, the automobile. The streets are alive with a strange mix of old and new. Horse-drawn carriages move alongside early motor cars. Streetcars rattle down busy avenues. Newsboys stand on corners shouting the day's headlines. It is a time of invention and optimism. People believe the future will be brighter than the past. Most Americans have little reason to worry about a war in Europe. The Atlantic Ocean feels enormous, almost like a protective wall. Across that ocean lie ancient kingdoms and empires, places that many Americans know only from maps and newspapers. Europe's problems seem very far away. And yet in just a few years, those distant problems will change America forever. But for now, on an ordinary summer day in 1914, life goes on. Children play in the streets. Factory whistles announce the end of another workday. Families gather on porches in the evening, escaping the heat and sharing stories. Nobody knows that history is about to take a sudden and dramatic turn. Thousands of miles away in southeastern Europe, a young man waits on a street corner. His name is Gavrilo Princip. He is only 19 years old. On June 28, 1914, he sees a car approaching. Inside sits Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and his wife, Sophie. A few moments later, gunshots echo through the streets. The Archduke and his wife are dead. At first, the news does not seem important to many Americans. After all, assassinations and political crises happen in Europe from time to time. But this event is different. It is like a single spark landing in a field of dry grass. Within weeks, Europe begins to descend into chaos. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Russia mobilizes its armies. Germany declares war on Russia. France enters the conflict. Then Britain joins the war. One nation after another is pulled into the fighting. Suddenly, Europe is at war. The newspapers in America begin printing larger and larger headlines. People gather around newsstands to read the latest reports. Many wonder how such a terrible conflict could have started so quickly. Some believe the war will be over by Christmas. After all, previous European wars had often ended relatively quickly. Few people can imagine what is about to happen. They do not yet know that this conflict will last more than 4 years. They do not know that millions of soldiers and civilians will lose their lives. And they certainly do not know that America itself will one day become part of the struggle. President Woodrow Wilson watches events carefully. He has been president since 1913. Wilson believes that the United States should remain neutral. On August 19, 1914, he asks Americans to be neutral in fact as well as in name. It is not an easy task. The United States is a nation of immigrants. Millions of Americans have family roots in Britain, Germany, Ireland, Italy, and many other European countries. Some feel sympathy for Britain and France. Others feel close to Germany. Dinner table conversations become heated. Friends disagree, newspapers take sides, but officially America remains neutral. Most people are relieved. Nobody wants another war. The memory of previous conflicts still lingers. Parents do not want their sons sent across the ocean to fight in a distant land. Farmers simply want to harvest their crops. Workers want steady jobs. Children want to enjoy their summers. For the moment, war remains something that happens somewhere else. Yet the conflict in Europe quickly grows larger and more terrible. The armies dig long trenches into the earth. These trenches stretch for hundreds of miles. The soldiers live in mud and water. They endure rain, cold, rats, and constant fear. New weapons make the war even deadlier. Machine guns fire hundreds of rounds each minute. Massive artillery guns shake the ground. Airplanes, still a new invention, are used for reconnaissance and combat. The war becomes unlike anything the world has ever seen. Back in America, newspapers publish dramatic stories from the front lines. People read about great battles and enormous casualties. The numbers are almost impossible to understand. Thousands dead, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. The war that many thought would end by Christmas continues into the winter and then into another year. Meanwhile, America experiences an unexpected economic boom. The countries fighting in Europe need food, clothing, and supplies. American factories begin producing huge amounts of goods. Farmers sell more crops. Industries expand. New jobs appear. In some places, factories run day and night. The war may be far away, but its effects are beginning to reach American shores. The nation grows wealthier. Cities become busier. Railroads carry goods across the country. Ports are crowded with ships. Yet despite the growing economy, many Americans still hope their country can avoid the conflict. In small towns across the nation, life remains peaceful. On warm evenings, families sit outside their homes. The sound of crickets fills the air. Church bells ring on Sundays. Baseball games attract cheering crowds. Movies, still silent and black and white, entertain growing audiences. It is a simpler world in many ways. There are no televisions, no smartphones, no internet. News travels by newspapers and telegraph. Letters remain one of the most important ways people stay connected. For many Americans, Europe feels incredibly far away. Then something unexpected begins to happen. The war at sea starts to threaten neutral countries. Britain uses its powerful navy to block German trade. Germany responds with a dangerous new weapon, the submarine. The Germans call it the U-boat. These underwater vessels can attack ships without warning. The oceans suddenly become more dangerous. American ships continue crossing the Atlantic. Passengers still travel between continents. But there is growing concern. Could neutral nations remain untouched by the conflict? By early 1915, that question becomes increasingly difficult to answer. Germany announces that the waters around Britain are now a war zone. Ships entering those waters may be attacked. The news worries many Americans. Still, life in the United States continues. Spring arrives, trees bloom. Children return to school after winter. Farmers prepare their fields. Nobody yet realizes that one event is about to change American opinion forever. In May of 1915, a great passenger ship sails across the Atlantic Ocean. Its name is the RMS Lusitania. It is one of the largest and most luxurious ships of its time. On board are nearly 2,000 passengers and crew members. Among them are more than 100 Americans. The voyage seems ordinary. The sea is calm. Passengers eat elegant meals and enjoy conversations. But beneath the waves, danger waits. On May 7, 1915, a German submarine spots the ship. A torpedo is fired. Moments later, there is an explosion. Then another. The great liner begins to sink. Panic spreads across the decks. Passengers rush for lifeboats. Some jump into the cold water. In less than 20 minutes, the ship disappears beneath the sea. Nearly 1,200 people lose their lives. The tragedy shocks the world. When news reaches America, newspapers print enormous headlines. People are horrified. Many are angry. Why had a passenger ship been attacked? Why had innocent civilians died? The sinking of the Lusitania does not immediately bring America into the war. But something important changes. For the first time, many Americans begin to feel that the conflict in Europe is no longer entirely distant. The ocean suddenly seems smaller. The war feels closer. President Wilson faces tremendous pressure. Some demand war. Others still plead for peace. Wilson chooses caution. He sends strong protests to Germany but avoids immediate military action. For now, America remains neutral. Yet the nation has changed. The years of complete separation are coming to an end. The events in Europe are becoming impossible to ignore. And somewhere across the Atlantic, millions of soldiers continue fighting in muddy trenches, unaware that another great nation is slowly being drawn toward the conflict. The United States still stands outside the war. But history is moving forward. The path toward American involvement has already begun. And in the months ahead, that path will grow ever narrower. For tonight, our story pauses here. The year is 1915. America remains at peace. But the distant thunder of war is growing louder. And before long, it will reach the shores of the United States itself. We continue our journey through one of the most important periods in American history. The year is 1915. The United States is still at peace, yet the world beyond its shores is changing rapidly. Every morning, Americans unfold their newspapers and read fresh reports from Europe. New battles, new casualties, new tragedies. The war that many believed would last only a few months has become something entirely different. It is becoming a war without an end in sight. In the fields of France and Belgium, long trenches stretch across the countryside like deep scars in the earth. The soldiers living there endure conditions that are almost impossible to imagine. Rain turns the trenches into rivers of mud. Cold winds blow through torn uniforms. Rats grow fat on scraps of food. Many soldiers spend weeks without a proper bath. Some pass the time writing letters home. Others stare into the darkness, wondering if they will ever see their families again. Back in America, these distant stories feel both fascinating and frightening. Most people still believe that the Atlantic Ocean protects them. President Woodrow Wilson continues to insist that the nation should remain neutral. He understands that many Americans have no desire to fight. In fact, millions of citizens are proud that their country has managed to stay out of the conflict. But neutrality is becoming more difficult with each passing month. American businesses are trading heavily with Britain and France. Factories work around the clock. Steel mills glow through the night. Railroads carry endless shipments of supplies. The economy is booming. Farmers enjoy higher prices for their crops. Workers find new jobs in expanding industries. For many Americans, the war has brought unexpected prosperity. Yet prosperity comes with new questions. If American goods are helping Britain and France, is the country truly neutral? Germany certainly does not think so. German leaders believe that American trade is helping their enemies survive. As a result, Germany continues to rely on one of its most feared weapons, the submarine. The German U-boats patrol the seas around Britain. Their mission is simple: stop ships from reaching the British Isles. The danger grows with every passing month. Some Americans begin to avoid traveling across the Atlantic. Others continue their journeys believing that passenger ships are safe. Meanwhile, President Wilson faces a difficult challenge. He wants to protect American lives while also keeping the nation out of war. It is a delicate balance, and every new incident threatens to upset it. As 1915 turns into 1916, another change is taking place within the United States. The country is beginning to prepare just in case. Military leaders quietly discuss expanding the army. The American armed forces are surprisingly small. Compared to the massive armies of Europe, the United States has only a limited number of trained soldiers. Most Americans do not consider this a problem. After all, why would the nation need a huge army if it plans to remain at peace? But some people are becoming uneasy. What if the war eventually reaches America? What if the country is forced to defend itself? These questions become more common. At the same time, ordinary life continues. Children walk to school, farmers harvest their crops. Families gather around pianos in the evenings and sing popular songs. Movie theaters attract large crowds. The nation seems peaceful and confident, yet beneath that calm surface, change is slowly taking place. By early 1916, the European war has already claimed millions of lives. Entire towns have lost their young men. Great empires are exhausted. The fighting seems endless. The names of distant places begin appearing regularly in American newspapers. Verdun, the Somme, Ypres. Each name becomes associated with terrible suffering. The Battle of Verdun alone lasts for months. Hundreds of thousands of men are killed or wounded. Americans struggle to understand the scale of the destruction. How could modern civilization produce such terrible violence? Many people begin to fear that the entire world has gone mad, and yet the United States remains outside the conflict. President Wilson hopes to keep it that way. In 1916, he runs for re-election. One of his most famous campaign slogans is, "He kept us out of war." For many voters, these words are deeply reassuring. The thought of sending American sons to fight in Europe is still unpopular. Wilson wins another term as president, but even as the election ends, events across the Atlantic continue moving in a dangerous direction. German leaders are becoming desperate. Britain's naval blockade is hurting the German economy. Food shortages are growing. Supplies are becoming scarce. Germany believes it must take stronger action. Military commanders propose a risky plan. They want to restart unrestricted submarine warfare. In simple terms, this means attacking almost any ship heading toward Britain, even if the ship belongs to a neutral nation. It is a dangerous strategy. German leaders know it could anger the United States, but they also believe they can force Britain to surrender before America can react. As these decisions are being made in Europe, Americans prepare to celebrate Christmas. Cities glow with festive lights. Churches hold special services. Children eagerly wait for gifts. Few realize that the coming year will transform their nation forever. The year 1917 arrives. Snow covers many parts of the country. The United States is still officially neutral. But now the storm is approaching. In January, Germany announces the return of unrestricted submarine warfare. The news spreads quickly. American leaders are deeply concerned. President Wilson understands that this decision places American ships and citizens in danger. Soon, several ships connected to the United States are attacked. Public anger grows. Many people who once supported neutrality begin changing their minds. Then another extraordinary event takes place. British intelligence intercepts a secret message. The message comes from Germany. It is known today as the Zimmermann Telegram. In it, Germany proposes an alliance with Mexico. If the United States enters the war, Germany suggests that Mexico attack its northern neighbor. In return, Germany promises support. When Americans learn of this message, they are shocked. The idea that a foreign power is encouraging an attack on the United States causes outrage. Trust in Germany declines rapidly. the nation suddenly feels less secure. More and more Americans begin to believe that war may be unavoidable. President Wilson spends many sleepless nights considering his options. He had worked hard to preserve peace. But now peace seems to be slipping away. The attacks at sea continue. American patience is running out. By the spring of 1917, the mood of the nation has changed dramatically. Crowds gather to discuss the latest headlines. Newspapers demand action. Many citizens still hope for peace, but others believe that the country must defend its rights and protect its people. Finally, President Wilson reaches a decision. On April 2nd, 1917, he stands before Congress. The chamber is filled with lawmakers and reporters. The atmosphere is solemn. Wilson delivers one of the most important speeches in American history. He explains that the world must be made safe for democracy. He asks Congress to declare war against Germany. Across the country, people wait anxiously for the outcome. Then on April 6, 1917, Congress approves the declaration. The United States is officially at war. After nearly 3 years of neutrality, America has entered the First World War. Church bells ring in some towns. In others, there is silence. Excitement and anxiety spread across the nation. Young men begin considering military service. Families worry about the future. Nobody knows how long the war will last. Nobody knows how many lives will be changed. But one thing is certain. America's journey through World War I has entered a completely new chapter. The peaceful nation that once watched events from across the ocean is now preparing to become one of the great powers fighting in Europe. And soon, thousands of ordinary Americans will leave their homes, board ships, and cross the Atlantic toward a battlefield unlike anything they have ever imagined. That is where our story will continue. For tonight, the year is 1917. The United States has entered the Great War, and a new adventure and a new hardship has just begun.
Tonight, our journey continues in the spring of 1917. The United States has officially entered the Great War. For nearly 3 years, Americans had watched the conflict from across the Atlantic Ocean. They had read the newspaper headlines, debated the issues, and hoped that somehow their country could avoid becoming involved. Now that hope has ended. War has arrived. Yet something surprising becomes immediately clear. The United States is not fully prepared. Compared to the enormous armies of Europe, America's military is quite small. The regular army numbers only a few 100,000 men, tiny compared with the millions already fighting in France and Belgium. The country must move quickly. Across America, government officials begin planning one of the largest military mobilizations in the nation's history. Recruitment posters appear on walls and shop windows. Newspaper advertisements encourage young men to serve. Bands play patriotic music in town squares. Parades march through city streets. Flags wave from homes and businesses. Many young men feel a sense of excitement. For some, the war seems like a great adventure. For others, it is a chance to serve their country. And for many, it is simply a duty. But not everyone is eager to go. Many parents are afraid. Mothers worry about sons who may soon sail across the ocean. Wives fear for their husbands. Children struggle to understand why their fathers might leave home. The nation experiences a mixture of pride and uncertainty. In May 1917, Congress passes the Selective Service Act. This law creates a draft. Millions of men between certain ages are required to register for military service. Across the country, long lines form outside registration stations. Young men fill out forms and wait their turn. Some joke with friends, others stand quietly, thinking about what may come next. By the end of the war, nearly 24 million American men will register for the draft. It is an astonishing number. Soon, thousands begin reporting to training camps. Many have never traveled far from home. Some have never even left their own state. Now they find themselves boarding trains and heading toward places with unfamiliar names. New military camps appear almost overnight. Large areas of land are transformed into temporary cities filled with wooden barracks and training fields. At first, there is confusion. The Army needs uniforms, boots, rifles, and equipment for enormous numbers of recruits. Supplies are not always available. Some soldiers train using wooden rifles because there are not enough real ones. Others wear mismatched uniforms. The Army is learning and growing at incredible speed. Life in the camps follows a strict routine. Soldiers wake before sunrise. Bugles echo through the cool morning air. The men line up for breakfast. Then the training begins. They learn how to march, how to salute, how to clean their weapons, how to follow orders. Many recruits have never experienced such discipline. The days are long and exhausting. Marches continue for miles. Drills are repeated again and again. Officers know that these ordinary citizens may soon face one of the deadliest battlefields in history. They must be prepared. At night, the camps grow quieter. Some soldiers write letters home. Others play cards or talk with new friends. Many wonder what Europe is really like. Will they see Paris? Will they witness great battles? Will they return home safely? No one knows. Meanwhile, the American government begins reorganizing the entire economy. Factories that once produced civilian goods now turn their attention toward war. Steel production increases. Shipyards become busier than ever. Millions of uniforms, boots, helmets, and blankets are manufactured. The railroads carry endless shipments of supplies. Farmers are encouraged to grow more food. The government asks citizens to conserve resources. People are encouraged to eat less wheat and less meat on certain days. Many families willingly cooperate. They believe they are helping the war effort. Women also play an increasingly important role. Thousands volunteer with organizations that support soldiers and their families. Many take jobs in factories. Others become nurses and prepare to serve overseas. The war begins to touch nearly every part of American life. At schools, children learn patriotic songs. Communities organize fundraisers. People buy war bonds to help finance the conflict. Posters encourage everyone to do their part. The nation is becoming united around a common purpose. Yet despite all the preparations, one great challenge remains. How will America transport its army across the Atlantic Ocean? The answer is both simple and difficult. Ships. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers must cross an ocean where German submarines still operate. The journey itself is dangerous. Military planners work carefully.
Large convoys are organized. Warships escort transport vessels whenever possible. Every crossing carries some risk. Then in June 1917, something historic happens. The first units of the American Expeditionary Forces arrive in France. The commander of these forces is General John J. Pershing. Pershing is a serious and experienced officer. He believes that American soldiers should fight together as an independent army rather than simply replacing losses in British and French units. When Pershing arrives in France, he is warmly welcomed. Crowds cheer, bands play music. The people of France have been fighting for nearly 3 exhausting years. The arrival of American troops brings new hope. A famous phrase begins spreading among the French people. America has come. But the truth is that only a small number of Americans have arrived so far. Millions more still need training. Millions more still need transportation. The process will take time. Back in the United States, military camps continue to expand. The new soldiers come from every part of the country. They are farmers, factory workers, teachers, students, clerks, and laborers. Some come from large cities. Others come from tiny rural communities. Many have different backgrounds and cultures. Yet in the Army, they wear the same uniform. They eat the same food. They train together. Friendships quickly form. For many young men, military service becomes one of the defining experiences of their lives. As summer turns into autumn, more troops begin arriving in Europe. The war there continues without mercy. The Western Front remains a land of trenches, barbed wire, and artillery fire. British and French armies have suffered terrible losses. They desperately need fresh troops. American soldiers know that sooner or later they too will face combat. Some feel eager, others feel nervous. Many experience both emotions at once. At training camps in France, the Americans learn valuable lessons from their allies. They study trench warfare. They practice using gas masks. They learn how to respond to artillery bombardments. Everything is new. Nothing quite resembles the peaceful towns and cities they left behind. As winter approaches, thousands of American soldiers spend their first Christmas away from home. Letters become precious treasures. Many men receive packages filled with cookies, candy, and photographs from their families. Others sit quietly and think about the loved ones they miss. Snow falls across parts of Europe. Church bells ring. For a brief moment, there is a feeling of peace, but everyone understands that the real test still lies ahead. The great battles of 1918 are coming. The American army is growing larger every day. Soon it will be called upon to fight. Soon ordinary young men from across the United States will find themselves in muddy trenches and shattered fields far from home. They will witness courage and fear, friendship and loss, victory and sacrifice. The United States has entered the war, built an army, and crossed the ocean. Now, at last, its soldiers are preparing for their first major battles. And that is where our story will continue. For tonight, the year is drawing to a close. The American Expeditionary Forces are in France. The guns of the Great War still thunder in the distance, and an entirely new chapter is about to begin. The entire story of America's journey through World War I. Tonight, we continue our journey into one of the most difficult and unforgettable chapters of the First World War. The year is now turning toward 1918. Thousands of American soldiers have crossed the Atlantic Ocean and arrived in France. For many of them, Europe feels like another world. The countryside is beautiful in some places. Small villages sit among rolling hills. Ancient churches rise above stone houses. Narrow roads wind through green fields and forests. Yet the signs of war are everywhere. Some villages are empty. Others have been damaged by shell fire. Church towers are broken. Homes stand abandoned. In some places, the sound of distant artillery can be heard day and night. The war never seems entirely far away. American soldiers continue their training. They march through muddy roads. They practice with rifles and machine guns. They learn to throw grenades. They train with gas masks, preparing for the terrifying possibility of poison gas attacks. Many soldiers had imagined a glorious adventure when they first enlisted. Now they are beginning to understand the reality of modern war. This is not the kind of warfare they had read about in stories. This is something far more dangerous. Soon, some American units are sent closer to the front lines. As they approach, the sounds become louder. Boom, boom, boom. The distant thunder of artillery shakes the ground. At night, flashes of light appear on the horizon. The sky glows orange and red. For many young soldiers, this is the first time they truly understand that they are entering a battlefield. Eventually, they reach the trenches. Nothing could have prepared them for what they see. The trenches are long, narrow ditches cut deep into the earth. They twist across the countryside for hundreds of miles. Wooden boards cover the muddy floors. Sandbags line the walls. In some places, water reaches a soldier's ankles. In others, it rises even higher. The smell is unforgettable. Mud, smoke, wet clothing, cooking fires. The soldiers quickly learn that trench life is mostly a waiting game. There are moments of terrible violence, but there are also long periods of silence. Hours pass, then days. Sometimes nothing seems to happen. The men eat simple meals. They clean their equipment. They write letters home. They talk quietly with friends. Then, without warning, artillery shells may suddenly begin falling. Every day carries uncertainty. The trenches are also home to countless rats. Some grow surprisingly large. They feed on scraps of food and live comfortably among the soldiers. The men dislike them, but after a while, many become almost accustomed to their presence. The weather is another enemy. Rain turns everything into thick mud. Boots sink into the ground. Clothing becomes wet and heavy. Cold winds blow across the battlefield. During winter, the conditions can be miserable. Yet the soldiers endure. At night, some men stand guard. This duty is known as watch. The darkness can feel endless. A soldier stares into the black landscape ahead, listening carefully. Sometimes there is only silence. Sometimes there are distant gunshots. Sometimes there is the sound of another soldier quietly singing. Far away, artillery continues its slow, deep rumble. Many soldiers later remember these long nights more clearly than the battles themselves. During quiet moments, friendships grow. Men from different states and different backgrounds become close companions. A farmer from Kansas might share a meal with a factory worker from New York. A student from California might sit beside a miner from Pennsylvania. The Army has brought together people who otherwise might never have met. They tell stories about home. They talk about favorite foods and childhood memories. They discuss what they plan to do after the war. Some dream of becoming business owners. Others hope to return to their farms. Many simply want to go home. Letters from home become precious. A letter from a mother, a wife, or a sweetheart can lift a soldier's spirits for days. The men read them again and again. Some keep them folded carefully in their pockets. Others carry family photographs everywhere they go. Even in war, thoughts of home remain strong. As the months pass, more American troops continue arriving in France. By early 1918, hundreds of thousands of soldiers are now overseas. Their presence gives new hope to the exhausted Allied armies. The British and French have been fighting for nearly 4 years. Their losses have been enormous. Fresh American troops bring new energy and confidence. German leaders understand this as well. They know that time is running out. If millions of Americans arrive, Germany's chances of victory may disappear. As a result, Germany launches a massive offensive in the spring of 1918. Their goal is simple: win the war before American strength becomes overwhelming. The fighting becomes intense. The Germans advance rapidly in some areas. The situation appears dangerous. Now American troops begin entering major combat. One of their early tests comes near a small French village called Cantigny. There, American soldiers launch an attack and successfully capture enemy positions. It is a relatively small battle compared to others in the war, but its importance is enormous. The Americans have proven that they can fight. Soon they face an even greater challenge. Near a forest called Below Wood, fierce fighting erupts. German forces are advancing toward Paris. American troops are ordered to stop them. The battle that follows becomes legendary. The fighting is brutal. Machine guns fire continuously. Artillery shells explode among the trees. The forest itself is torn apart. Branches fall. Smoke fills the air. The Americans advance again and again. The cost is terrible. Many soldiers are killed or wounded, but they continue forward. By the end of the battle, the Germans have been stopped. Below Wood becomes one of the most famous actions in American military history. Stories of courage spread quickly. Back home, newspapers proudly report the achievements of the American soldiers. Families read every word. Some search the papers for names of loved ones. Others wait anxiously for letters. As summer arrives, the American army grows larger still. New divisions continue crossing the Atlantic. Supply ships arrive one after another. The United States has become a major force in the war. Yet the soldiers at the front know that even greater battles are still ahead. The war is not over. Far from it, the great offensives of late 1918 are approaching. Millions of men are preparing for one final effort. The American soldiers who once trained in quiet camps back home are now seasoned veterans. They have experienced trench life. They have heard the roar of artillery. They have seen both courage and loss. And soon they will take part in some of the largest battles ever fought by the United States. That is where our story will continue. For tonight, the guns still echo across France. The trenches remain filled with weary soldiers. And somewhere beneath the stars of Europe, thousands of Americans lie awake wondering what tomorrow will bring. The entire story of America's journey through World War I. The year is 1918. Summer is slowly giving way to autumn. Across France, millions of soldiers wait for what many believe will be the final chapter of the Great War. The American expeditionary forces have grown tremendously. Only a year earlier, there had been relatively few American soldiers in Europe. Now more than 1 million are serving overseas. Fresh troops continue arriving every week. Ships cross the Atlantic carrying men, horses, food, and supplies. The United States has become a major participant in the war. The Allies know that this new strength may finally tip the balance. The German Empire knows it as well. After 4 long years of fighting, Germany is exhausted. Its people suffer from shortages of food and fuel. Its armies are tired. Yet the war continues. The soldiers at the front can sense that something important is approaching. There is a feeling in the air that history is moving quickly. The calm moments become rare. The roads behind the front lines are crowded with men and equipment. Long columns of soldiers march through villages. Wagons creak under heavy loads. Motor trucks carry supplies toward the battlefield. At night, the roads glow with lanterns. The sounds of movement never seem to stop. For many American soldiers, the coming weeks will become the defining experience of their lives. In September of 1918, American forces prepare for a major offensive at a place called Saint-Mihiel. For years, the Germans had held a large bulge in the Allied lines there. Now the Americans plan to eliminate it. Before the attack begins, thousands of soldiers quietly move into position. The nights are dark. Rain falls in some areas. The men speak softly. Many think about home. Some write letters that they may never send. Others simply sit and wait. Then at last the attack begins. The roar of artillery shakes the earth. Thousands of guns fire almost at once. The sky flashes with light. The sound is so powerful that some soldiers later say it seemed like the world itself was breaking apart. As dawn arrives, American troops advance. They move through mud and smoke. Machine guns open fire. Shells explode nearby. The battlefield becomes a place of noise and confusion, yet the offensive succeeds. The German positions begin to collapse. Thousands of enemy soldiers are captured. The victory at Saint-Mihiel is an important moment. It proves that the American army can plan and carry out a large independent operation. The success brings new confidence. But there is little time for celebration. An even larger battle is about to begin. Soon, American forces move toward a heavily forested region known as the Meuse-Argonne. This offensive will become the largest battle in American history up to that time. More than 1 million American soldiers will eventually participate. The landscape is difficult. There are forests, hills, and deep valleys. German defenses have been built and strengthened for years. The enemy positions are formidable. On September 26, 1918, the attack begins. Again, artillery fills the air with thunder. The Americans advance. The fighting is fierce. In some places, progress is slow. Barbed wire blocks the way. Machine guns hidden in forests fire continuously. The soldiers become exhausted. Some march for hours carrying heavy equipment. Others fight in rain and mud. Sleep becomes a luxury. Food is sometimes scarce, yet the advance continues. Stories of courage emerge from every corner of the battlefield. Messengers run through shell fire to deliver orders. Medics treat wounded men under dangerous conditions. Soldiers help injured friends back to safety. Acts of bravery, both large and small, happen every day. For the men on the front lines, survival often depends upon teamwork and trust. The weeks pass slowly. Villages change hands. Hills are captured, roads are secured, the cost is high. Thousands of American soldiers are killed or wounded. Families back home receive telegrams that change their lives forever. Many communities mourn together. Churches hold special services, flags are lowered. The war touches nearly every corner of the nation. Yet despite the sacrifices, the Allies continue moving forward. German resistance begins to weaken. At the same time, events beyond the battlefield are changing rapidly. Germany's allies begin leaving the war. One after another, countries seek peace. The German people are weary and hungry. Many no longer believe victory is possible. Protests and unrest spread across the country. By early November, it becomes clear that the end may finally be near. On the front lines, however, the fighting continues. The soldiers do not yet know exactly when peace will come. Each day still brings danger. Each morning could still be their last. Then at last, word begins to spread. Germany has requested an armistice. An armistice is not exactly a peace treaty. It is an agreement to stop fighting. The news moves through the trenches slowly. Some soldiers are hopeful, others remain cautious. They have heard rumors before. Finally, the official message arrives. The fighting will end on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, November 11th, 1918. The soldiers check their watches. The minutes seem to pass very slowly. Some continue firing until the very end. Others sit quietly, waiting. Then the moment arrives, 11 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly, the guns fall silent. For the first time in years, there is peace. The great artillery pieces stop firing. The machine guns become quiet. The strange, endless thunder of war disappears. Many soldiers can hardly believe it. Some cheer, some laugh, some embrace one another, others simply sit down in silence. After so much noise and destruction, the quiet feels almost unreal. Across France and Britain, church bells begin to ring. Crowds gather in cities and villages. People celebrate in the streets. Flags wave from windows. Music fills the air. The war that had consumed the world for more than 4 years is finally over. Back in the United States, the reaction is much the same. Newspapers print enormous headlines. Factories sound their whistles. Church bells ring. People pour into the streets. Strangers shake hands. Families gather together. The nation celebrates the end of the Great War. Yet amid the joy, there is also sadness. Nearly every community has suffered losses. Many soldiers will never return home. Many families have empty chairs at their dinner tables. The price of victory has been very high. As the celebrations slowly fade, a new challenge begins. The soldiers must come home. The world must rebuild, and America itself has changed forever. The nation that entered the war in 1917 was not the same nation that emerged from it in 1918. The United States has become a major world power. Its influence is greater than ever before. But the memories of the war, the trenches, the battles, the friendships, and the sacrifices will remain for generations. For tonight, the guns have finally fallen silent. The fields of France grow peaceful once again. The long and terrible struggle known as the First World War has reached its end. But our story is not quite finished. One final chapter remains. The soldiers still have to return home, and the war's legacy will shape America and the world for decades to come. We reach the final chapter of America's journey through the First World War. The guns have fallen silent. The fighting has ended. Across Europe, a strange and unfamiliar sound fills the air. Silence. For more than 4 years, millions of people had lived with the constant thunder of artillery, the crack of rifles, and the fear that tomorrow might bring another battle. Now at last, there is peace. In the muddy trenches of France, American soldiers slowly begin to realize that the war is truly over. Some smile, some laugh, some sit quietly and stare into the distance. Many think about home, the farms, the cities, the small towns, the families they have not seen for months, and in some cases, years. They wonder when they will return. The answer is not simple. Bringing millions of soldiers home is an enormous task. Ships must be organized, supplies must be moved, military camps must be prepared. The process takes time, and so many soldiers spend weeks and even months waiting. Some remain in France, others visit nearby villages. Some take photographs with new friends. Many write letters to their families, sharing the wonderful news that the war has finally ended. Back in the United States, families eagerly wait for the return of their loved ones. Every arriving ship brings scenes of joy. Parents embrace their sons, wives hug their husbands, children meet fathers they have barely remembered. Train stations become places of celebration. Bands play patriotic songs. Flags wave in the wind. For many Americans, it feels as though the entire nation is taking a long, deep breath after years of anxiety. Yet the return home is not the same for everyone. Some soldiers come back with injuries, some have lost friends. Others carry memories that are difficult to describe. The war has changed them. They have seen things that few people back home can fully understand. The battlefields of Europe remain with them long after they return. Meanwhile, Europe faces enormous challenges. Entire towns have been destroyed. Millions of homes need rebuilding. Countless families mourn loved ones who will never return. The war has reshaped the map of the world. Several great empires have disappeared. The old order of Europe is gone. The world is entering a new era. President Woodrow Wilson believes that this new era should be different from the old one. He hopes to create a lasting peace. In January 1919, leaders from around the world gather in France for an important meeting. It becomes known as the Paris Peace Conference. Wilson arrives with a vision. He wants nations to work together to prevent another terrible war. One of his most important ideas is the creation of an international organization called the League of Nations. The League's purpose is simple. Countries would discuss their disagreements peacefully instead of fighting wars. Many people find the idea inspiring. After witnessing the destruction of the Great War, the dream of lasting peace seems more important than ever. But not everyone agrees. Some leaders want Germany to face harsh punishment. Others worry that international agreements could limit their own countries. The negotiations become difficult. Months pass. Finally, a peace treaty is signed. It becomes known as the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty officially ends the war between Germany and the Allied powers. However, many historians later argue that some of its terms create new problems and tensions. For the moment, though, most people simply feel relief that the fighting has ended. Back in the United States, life begins returning to normal. Factories that produced military equipment return to civilian production. Soldiers search for jobs. Families settle back into everyday routines. Baseball games once again fill stadiums. Children return to schools. Cities continue to... The war's numbers are almost impossible to imagine. More than 4 million Americans served during the conflict. Over 100,000 lost their lives, some in battle and others due to disease. Worldwide, the losses are even greater. Millions upon millions of soldiers and civilians have perished. An entire generation has been changed forever. And yet, amid the sorrow, there is also hope. People believe they have survived the war that was often called the war to end all wars. They hope that humanity has learned its lesson. They dream that future generations will never experience such destruction again. History, of course, will take a different path. But in 1919 and 1920, few people can see what lies ahead. For now, there is peace. As we reach the end of our story, let us return one final time to that quiet America of 1914. The peaceful farms, the busy city streets, the families sitting on their porches during warm summer evenings. None of them knew what was coming. None of them could have imagined how much the world would change. Yet when the challenge arrived, millions of ordinary Americans answered the call. Farmers became soldiers. Students became officers. Factory workers crossed an ocean and fought in distant fields. Their journey carried the United States from neutrality to the center of one of history's greatest conflicts. The First World War changed nations, reshaped borders, and transformed societies. But at its heart, it was also a story of ordinary people living through extraordinary times. And now, as our long journey through America's experience in World War I comes to an end, the battlefields are quiet. The trenches have grown still. The ships have returned home. The bells of peace have long since stopped ringing. Only the memories remain. Thank you for joining this journey into the past. We begin one final journey. The guns of the First World War have long since fallen silent. The soldiers have returned home. The parades have ended. The victory celebrations have faded into memory. And yet, in many ways, the Great War is not truly over. Its effects will continue shaping America and the world for generations. In the years after the war, small towns across the United States begin building monuments to their fallen soldiers. Stone memorials appear in city squares. Bronze plaques are placed inside churches. Names are carefully carved into marble. Each name represents a son, a brother, a husband, or a friend. For many families, these monuments become places of remembrance. Every year, people gather to honor those who never returned. The memory of the war becomes part of American life. Veterans also carry their own memories. Some remember the friendships they formed in training camps and on the battlefields of France. Others remember the long nights in muddy trenches. Many remember the joy they felt when the guns finally fell silent on November 11th, 1918. As the years pass, veterans organizations become important parts of communities across the country. Former soldiers meet to share stories and remember those who served beside them. Their experiences become part of the nation's history. Meanwhile, the world itself has changed. Before the war, much of Europe had been ruled by powerful empires. After the war, several of those empires no longer exist. New countries appear on the map. Borders are redrawn. Governments rise and fall. The old world has disappeared. The United States has changed as well. Its industries are stronger than ever. Its economy has grown enormously. Its influence stretches across the globe. More and more nations now look toward America as one of the world's leading powers. This is a new role for the United States. It is a responsibility that will shape the future, yet many Americans still hope to avoid foreign conflicts. The terrible losses of the Great War have left deep scars. Parents who lost sons do not want another generation to experience the same suffering. Veterans who survived the trenches often pray that no one will ever have to endure such horrors again. The phrase, "never again," becomes a common hope. Unfortunately, history is rarely so simple. The peace that follows World War I proves to be fragile. The problems left behind by the war do not disappear completely. Economic troubles and political tensions continue in many countries. In the years ahead, these problems will grow. But in the early 1920s, few people can imagine another global conflict. Most simply want to enjoy peace. America enters a new decade. Cities become larger. Automobiles become common. Radio begins bringing news and entertainment directly into people's homes. The world feels modern and exciting. Young people dance to new music. Airplanes become more advanced. Technology moves forward at an incredible pace. The future seems full of possibilities. And yet the memory of World War I remains. Books are written about the war. Poems are composed. Photographs preserve moments from the trenches and battlefields. Historians study the conflict, trying to understand how such a devastating war could have happened. Schools teach new generations about the sacrifices that were made. The Great War becomes a lesson for the future. Even today, more than 100 years later, the legacy of World War I is still with us. Many of the borders created after the war shaped the modern world. Many of the political ideas born during that time continue to influence international affairs. And the stories of the ordinary men and women who lived through those extraordinary years continue to inspire us. As we reach the true end of our journey, let us remember that history is more than dates and battles. History is made by people, by young soldiers crossing an ocean for the first time, by families waiting for letters from distant lands, by nurses caring for the wounded, by factory workers building supplies, by children growing up in a world transformed by events they could barely understand. The story of America's journey through World War I is ultimately a story of courage, sacrifice, hope, and change. And although the Great War ended more than a century ago, its echoes can still be heard in the world we live in today. Thank you for traveling back through time and exploring this remarkable chapter of history. And as the night grows quiet once more, we leave the battlefields behind and return to the present, carrying with us the lessons and memories of the past. We spend some time with the ordinary Americans who found themselves in extraordinary circumstances. When most of the young men of 1917 joined the army, they did not think of themselves as heroes. They were farmers, teachers, factory workers, students, and clerks. Many had never traveled far from home, yet the Great War would transform some of them into legends. In the trenches of France, courage often appeared in small moments. A soldier sharing his last piece of bread with a friend, a medic risking his life to help the wounded, a messenger carrying orders through artillery fire. Acts of bravery happened every day. Among these soldiers was a young man from Tennessee named Alvin York. Before the war, York lived a quiet life in the countryside. He never imagined becoming famous. But during the Meuse-Argonne offensive in October 1918, his actions became one of the most remarkable stories of the war. Under heavy enemy fire, York and several other soldiers became separated from their unit. Despite the danger, York continued fighting and helped capture a large number of German soldiers. News of his bravery spread quickly. When he returned home after the war, he was welcomed as a national hero. Yet York always remained humble. He often said that he had simply done his duty. There were countless others whose names never became famous. Young men from small towns across America showed courage in the forests and fields of France. Some returned home to their families. Others never saw America again. Their sacrifices became part of the nation's memory. During the war, military nurses also displayed extraordinary bravery. Many worked close to the front lines. They treated wounded soldiers day and night. Some endured artillery bombardments in dangerous conditions. Their dedication saved countless lives. The war also created deep friendships. Men who had met only months earlier became lifelong friends. Together they experienced fear, hardship, and hope. These bonds often lasted for the rest of their lives. As the years passed, veterans gathered at reunions and shared stories of those days. They remembered the laughter in training camps, the cold nights in the trenches, and the joy they felt when peace finally arrived. The story of World War I is not only the story of nations and armies. It is also the story of ordinary people who discovered extraordinary strength within themselves. Their courage became one of the lasting legacies of the Great War. And now, we arrive at our final chapter. More than 100 years have passed since the guns of the First World War fell silent. The young soldiers of 1918 are gone. The trenches have long since disappeared beneath grass and forests. The battlefields are quiet, yet the Great War has not been forgotten. Across Europe, memorials still stand. Cemeteries stretch across peaceful hillsides. Rows of white headstones remind visitors of the enormous cost of war. Every year, people gather to honor those who served. In the United States, November 11th became a special day of remembrance. Originally known as Armistice Day, it later became Veterans Day, a time to honor all American veterans. Schools, museums, and historians continue telling the stories of World War I. Old letters are carefully preserved. Photographs are studied. Diaries help us understand what life was like for the people who lived through those difficult years. The First World War also left many lessons. It showed how quickly small events can grow into global crises. It demonstrated the terrible human cost of modern warfare. And it revealed the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation. Perhaps the greatest lesson is this: history is not made only by famous leaders. History is also made by ordinary people, by the young soldier writing a letter home, by the mother waiting for news, by the nurse caring for the wounded, by the family hoping for peace. As we close our long journey through America's experience in World War I, let us imagine one final scene: a peaceful evening in America. A small town grows quiet as the sun sets. A church bell rings softly. Children laugh somewhere in the distance. The world continues moving forward, but the memories of the Great War remain. They remind us of sacrifice. They remind us of courage. And they remind us how precious peace truly is. Thank you for joining this journey through history. May the stories of those who lived through the Great War never be forgotten.